Welcome to the first Hemmings Club 54 panel discussion, How to Build a Perfect Custom Ride. Covercraft is honored to sponsor this webinar because we work with so many of these fantastic builders, such as these that are on the panel today. Thanks for joining us and enjoy this discussion.
Covercraft. We understand that it's not just a car, it's tradition, passed from generation to generation. That's why, for over 50 years, we've dedicated ourselves to protecting the things that move you. We understand that the things we help you protect are the things that help you pursue your passions, and our passion is for finding the best ways to make sure you can focus on yours without worrying about anything else. Covercraft, protecting the things that move you.
Welcome to the inaugural episode of Hemmings Club 54. We are thrilled to have a distinguished panel of custom builders here today. We are joined by Steve Strope from Pure Visions, located in Simi Valley, California, a world-renowned street machine, muscle car, and hot rod fabrication shop. They have garnered multiple magazine features here in the United States, including Japan, France, Australia, and Germany. Not only in addition to the magazines, they've been featured in numerous features, garnered awards around the country. They specialize in full design, concepts, and build projects, and he is revered for doing more with less. His clients include a literal litany of the biggest names in the hobby, including Hot Rod Magazine, Prolonged Lubricants, Guitar Center, Mattel Toys, Petrol Advertising, and Anvil Auto. They have had their own episode on TLC's hit show Rides, a 6-part feature on hand-built hot rods on Motor Trend Television, its own line of die-cast cars with Mattel's Hot Wheel brands, and their features have been seen in numerous movies befitting their Hollywood location. Steve, welcome to joining us.
Well, that's a shining introduction. Thank you. That's humbling. Good grief.
It is humbling, and you're going to be humbled even more when you hear about Jonathan Goolsbee. Growing up in Hueytown, Alabama, a hometown known for its NASCAR favorites. Jonathan has been indulging his automotive passion since he was a young kid. For more than 30 years, he's been in the industry. He started out as the head painter for a local Chevrolet dealer. In late 2004, the allure of owning his own business was too much to resist, and he started Goolsbee Customs. And with over 15 years of attending and displaying at events, Jonathan and his team have won awards like Street Machine of the Year and the Mother Shine Award at SEMA. Jonathan, thanks for joining us.
I appreciate it and glad to be here.
Another Southern California, Neil Tjin, is one of the most recognized designers in the industry. It's hard to believe, Neil, given looking at you, that for almost 2 decades, you've teamed up with major OE companies such as Chevy, Pontiac, Scion, Honda North America, Hyundai, and the Ford Motor Company. You are also the executive editor of Hot, Compact, and Import Magazine and B-Scene Magazine. Really importantly, you were the 2004 Industry Person of the Year, the 2005 SEMA Person of the Year. You have also worked with a number of great iconic brands like Pennzoil, Shell, Turtle Wax, WD-40, one of my personal favorites, McDonald's, Falcon Tires, Bear Brakes, Exalta Paint, Ford, Hyundai, Chevy, Pontiac, Scion, and Honda. Neil, thanks for being here.
Thank you, sir, and thank you for the introduction. I appreciate it.
And if you cannot guess by looking at the cougar behind Kurt Lawrence, he is known as the Cougar Specialist, a moniker given to him by Craig Jackson, starting with his father at the age of 13 with the 1970 Mercury Cougar Eliminator. It started KTL restorations. He has absolutely dominated on the show circuit, with that vehicle winning almost every major award prior to its retirement in 2004 and its subsequent sale at Barrett Jackson. A self-taught painter, Kurt has won numerous awards, and he's known for his custom builds. He is also working on Project Artemis for Hemmings, and is being recognized with accolades from organizations like Good Guys and SEMA. Kurt, thanks for being here.
Thank you for having me.
Try to restrain that enthusiasm, Kurt. And last but certainly not least is Steve Moal, joining us from Oakland, California. Steve's grandfather, William, came over from France right before the turn of the last century, already a skilled wheelwright. He started building coach-built bodies and wheels for wagons. And by 1911, 3 years before the First World War, he was doing a wide array of coach work and repairs. And in the 1920s, started lending his skills to race cars and speedsters. In the 1940s, before the start of another world war, Steve's father, George, started a business at the site of the current shop that Steve works out of, and literally embedded himself in the hot rod community. And of course, over the last several decades, Steve has carried on that mantle in fine form, building some really amazing builds for some of the most discerning clients in the world. Steve, thanks for joining us.
Thank you.
So I guess the first question, the question probably everyone wants to know is, and we'll start with Kurt, we kind of touched on it in your introduction. How did you start becoming a car guy, and where did this passion really first take place?
The passion for me, it took place when I was young. My dad was always a car guy and everything else. And then unfortunately, when him and my mom got divorced, his car got put in the garage and it just got boxes piled on top of it and stuff. And I used to sneak into the garage and play in the car and make all kinds of noises and stuff. And I was always into it and always just had I don't know, the feeling of being always wanting to work on cars. And, you know, I just never thought I would ever be at this level with it, but I always knew I wanted to be part of it in the industry of working on cars and stuff like that.
Well, I mean, looking around the other panelists, I mean, you've certainly arrived in some pretty august company. Steve Strope, how did it start for you?
That's easy. I modified and changed and altered every toy I had, every single one of them. That went on to, which was the first hot rod for a lot of guys in my industry, the BMX bike. That was the first. Mr. Peterson, who started Hot Rod, kind of blocked. A hot rod is a vehicle that is modified by the owner for better looks and performance. So our BMX bikes, you break apart, get a lighter, cooler, tricker one. Everyone would have their own. Like my bike was chrome with red parts. His was blue with white parts. So that was kind of my first introduction to wrenches and learning not to strip out things and building my own thing. And then luckily for me, around me, there was a whole bunch of guys that raced small time racing, dirt track, asphalt, bunch of NASCAR tracks around. Plus, by that time, I was fiddling around with dirt bikes. So I was tinkering on cars, performance variety, before I could even drive. Got my first car, promptly modified that. Second car was a race car, promptly modified that. And built myself an El Camino in my dad's barn, moved to Southern California in 95. That got in hot rod, custom lesser truck, and custom rodder. Sold that car to somebody in Japan, built another car in my tandem parking underground parking garage at my apartment in Studio City. And that car went on to be top 10 car of the year, cover car. And I didn't even have a shop. By the time I had a shop, I already had 2 top 10 cars of the year with hot rod and about 14 or 15 features. So everyone's like, well, why don't you open a shop? And I'm like, nobody wants to pay me to work on their car. And I appeared to be wrong. So I opened up a shop and it just took off from then. So it's been a lifelong, I can't leave it alone. Got to noodle with it, got to play with it, change it, alter it. You know, I'd alter my breakfast cereal if I could. So just love doing this.
And Steve, many of us on this call think you have altered your breakfast cereal because it is still very early morning on the West Coast, and you have far more energy than anybody else does.
I have plenty of energy.
That's fantastic. And Neil, you're kind of known for your work in the import community. Was your first experience with cars, import cars, or was it something else?
Yes, sir. So I started in the mid-90s out of high school. Unlike these amazing guys, it was a hobby for me. I was into sports, but I wasn't very good. So I got into cars, and I was just very fortunate. I had mentors, like many guys on this panel and guys that came before me, started following what they were doing, fell in love with it. And I moved here in 2003 to California. The industry was here. It opened a lot of doors for me, and very fortunate to still be doing it after almost over 20 years, and being with panelists like this and seeing what they do, and, you know, just Googling their names. It's an honor, and look forward to the next 20 years.
Well, we're looking forward to it too, Neil. And Jonathan, last and certainly not least, we're going to actually get to Steve too, but growing up in the South, was it different for you? How did the bug strike you? Was it NASCAR? Was it something else?
Pretty much NASCAR and racing. We grew up with the racing around us. I grew up with racing in my family. We still do racing now, and you tore up a lot of cars, and you learn how to fix a lot of cars, and painting, and putting together and modifying. And then you wanted to be the best looking car and win that competition, and that's pretty much where it started for me. And then we moved to I started at the dealership painting cars, and then you have your other people that said, if you painted that race car, why can't you paint this? And then you start doing older cars and muscle cars. And finally, I had a guy we had painted a bunch of Buicks for. He said, you need to go buy this body shop down the street. And I was 25, 6, and I was like, I don't need all that. And he said, I'm buying it, and you're going to buy it from me. We're going to do a 10-year plan. He said, you're young enough to climb out on that limb, and if it breaks, you can climb up and find another limb. So that stuck with me. We went straight into buying it and paid it off in 10 years, and bought another building, and we just paid it off, and we've been moving ahead ever since.
That is a fantastic story. And talking about buildings and kind of your touch with a building, Steve Moal, you are the senior member of this panel. It's certainly in your blood, and you've certainly got a sterling reputation. Does the fact that you literally grew up in this industry affect kind of how it started for you, or did you kind of have, like Steve Strope, this independent desire to kind of modify things?
No, I grew up right in the hotbed of all this stuff, right here in this building, by the way, which was built 75 years ago. We still have the same phone number. So we've survived, you might say. But in this neighborhood was Tommy the Greek and Freddie Agabation, and this is where the Oakland Roachers show started, right down the street from where I am sitting right now. And so this is what I grew up around. And my father was mostly into boat racing. So I went to a lot of boat racing, and I would have been into boats more than I am now. But you know, it's hard to take a girl out in your boat to go out on a date. Driving. So we started messing around with cars, and around Oakland was a lot of custom cars and jalopies and typical 50s, 60s stuff. And that's what I grew up around. I live very, very close to a famous metal man named Jack Hageman, Jack Hageman Sr. And so there was a lot of guys around here that were my heroes. And I couldn't get enough of it. And I started, like Steve over here, changing everything that I had. My grandfather said, I can't see where you're making it any better, but you sure like changing everything. And so anyway, here we are.
Exactly. And that desire for change, Kurt, where does the genesis for a custom build start? Is it always with the customer, or is it something that you work with together? Or sometimes does that idea kind of spring from your imagination?
The client, it's usually, it's the client's dream, and then we build it, to what they want. And then, we design the car around what they want, and we add in some of our design ideas and stuff like that. And we come up with a collaboration of ideas, and we take all the good ones and what everybody likes, and then we put it together.
Neil, have you ever had a situation where a client came to you with an idea that you didn't think was very good, and you had to kind of direct the conversation to come up with something that you knew could achieve the purpose for what it was built for?
Yes, sir. And for me, it's some on the OEM side, which I know some of these guys know, and you have to be gentle, but I don't always have a filter. So it's the way it comes across. But yeah, I think it's from everybody's angles, and what we do is so opinion based, and everybody has a different opinion. So we try to build the coolest things, cleanest, that stand out, for instance, at SEMA. But yeah, it's definitely a tightrope of being professional, but still trying to put out the right product. So yeah, it goes both ways for sure.
Steve Strope, you have worked with some of the most high-profile clients imaginable. I assume they're also probably some of the most demanding. How do you walk that tightrope?
Very easy. I tell them, I don't tell them anything. I usually recommend that when you hire a specialist, you let them do their job. And I'm very fortunate that most of the guys coming to me have already been looking at the stuff I've been doing for years, already like, and the rest of the guys can understand this. People come to you because they like your style. They've usually already looked into you or followed along with you. So my guys, I'm lucky. I've only got 3 employees and myself. There's usually about a 1.5 year wait to get in. So I usually get to pick my client, and they already come in with the understanding that I'm going to be designing something for them. They may suggest a base vehicle, like, wow, I've always wanted a, fill in the blank. Always wanted a 70 Chevelle, put your spin on it. I will do that. And there's other times I wake up at 4 a.m. and just start sketching ideas. And then that turns into like, we did a Fairlane that won the Ford Design Award at SEMA. And most of the big designs on that car, the big ideas on it, came at like 3 or 4 a.m. I just started sketching the ideas down. and had a client approach me. He loved the idea and we built it. So I usually have a large majority of the control of the design, but I'm kind of picky about that because it's representing my company. I've turned away many people with large pocketbooks because they want to build something that is not my style or not something that I want representing my company. And I'm very fortunate to be in the position where I can turn that away and choose a project that better represents my style or my company. So a lot of it's from my head and my design, and most of the people coming through the door already want that. They already want my spin on something. They already like that design element I create. So it's usually perfectly fine, you know. I love doing a good job, and we make sure that our customers are happy.
Yeah, and Steve Moal, you have created some, not just customs, but some one-off vehicles inspired by some of these iconic vehicles in the past. Steve Moal, when you're doing something like the Andrews Aston Martin or the 275 Ferrari-inspired vehicle that you built, you're using that original inspiration as a starting point. How do you get it past that into fully functional or fully fleshed out form?
Well, we call it, we discover the design with our clients. So they have some ideas. You have to be a very good listener, and you could offer up your opinion based on your experience, but you have to do that tactfully, as all these guys know, because there's a fine line from what we want to do and what we love to do and surviving in business. So we do discover the design. Generally, these clients are like Steve Strope said, they want what you do. They come to you for a reason. They like your style. So I think we pride ourselves in being good listeners and try to execute efficiently for our clients and do the best job we can. And with a bit of luck, it brings somebody else along.
Jonathan, you kind of started out kind of at the grassroots of everything. You started out as a painter at a local dealership. How important in realizing whatever your particular vision is that paint work?
I think it's very important because especially if you're going for awards and everything, you want to make sure you hit all them fine-tuned spots that people don't really take that much attention to. And that's the one little step that sets you over from everybody else. You know, if you can get behind a panel or something where you have to kind of get down on your knees or get a light and look in there and look at it, and if you can finish that spot out, then you're one step ahead of the other person that didn't take that little bit of effort.
Was that the hardest part of the job to learn, the painting process, or was it the metal work or the interiors? What is the one aspect of a custom build that you sweat the details on the most?
I would mainly say starting it from scratch and getting everything pinpointed down to the wire before we start on all of it. And then once we start putting it together, it's pinpointing the gaps, every little bitty detail that seams on everything. All of it's a full package on it, so you just end up one thing leads into the other, and it's all of it together.
Kurt, do you agree with that?
I do.
When you're going through the process, is there any particular part that you pay more attention to than others?
It would be it's really the overall car, fitment, interior, straight lines, keeping it all just nice and tight and just well put together. Engine bay, making sure the engine bay, even though if it's a modified or something like that, or a full custom, way each bolt looks in the car, all that stuff, it all makes a difference at the end of the day.
And Neil, is the same hold true for you?
Yes, sir. For us, it's a little different because we do a lot of the new OEM stuff, especially like before. So I would say paint and wheels really on our builds. And then if we have to design new products, like if we do bare brakes or things like that, headlights, making sure they still fit the OEM theme, but look cool. And then the attention to detail. But I would definitely say paint, wheels is where it starts for us.
And Steve Moal, is metalwork really the place that you guys shine because it really is something you're known for? Or are there other aspects that you try to pay as much attention to?
we've received a lot of attention on our metalwork. It's just part of a build, and particularly the complete builds that we do. So our complete builds, we engineer the suspension, build the chassis. We make absolutely every part, the entire platform, and the body is one part of it. We're blessed to have great craftsmen here that are that have mastered their craft of coach building. So we are able to make cars from scratch, but it's a challenging process, and challenging mean, like Neil was saying, is the packaging here. You got to get the packaging right so the people fit in it, they don't cook in it, and it looks good with them in it, and on and on and on. So our challenges are beyond just the metalwork, and metalwork gets a lot of attention, you know. But as all these guys in the panel, there's a lot of things that don't show that are at the top of our list as well.
So Steve Strope, I mean, you've got these kind of really complex builds. Is the process really the same as these other guys?
Yeah. With these builds, Jonathan made a real good point. It's every part. Every part's important. And having it flushed out and having the ideas and the concept all the way through thought out. When I do a lot of themes, I also do I create an imaginary background. We had another car that won the Ford Design Award at SEMA. It's called the Martini Mustang, and I did a bunch of research, and Ford's first races won with the Mustang was a Tour de France in '64 in October. So their first racing was European road racing for the Mustang. And so I developed a whole background theory of what if Ford went European road racing, found out it wasn't called the Mustang over there. It was called the T5. They didn't have the rights to call it a Mustang. So I created, taking from the Shelby GT350R, I created the T5R. That was, what if they got involved with Martini, even though Martini was mainly Porsche? But what if Ford and Martini got together for a European road rally car, and then they utilized their 4-cam Ford Lotus motor that won Indy with Steve Clark? I got my hands on one of those motors. So when you have that theme, now everything in the design is corralled by that theme. Every part, every piece, if you can't buy it or find it, you make it to look like it came in this case, 1966 for road racing or rally racing, little levers and clips and a clock and a chrono on the dash. Everything's got to follow along with that theme and that idea. So a lot of my cars have a whole, even a fake backstory. The aforementioned Fairlane I talked about, I did a what if Ford had a secret performance group called Black Ops, and they worked on tuning up the cars to work in their racing programs for the following year. So what if they had this Fairlane that had a hidden adjustable torsion bar suspension and borrowed from Jim Hall at Chaparral and had an active air brake spoiler in the back that worked with the braking system, and all of it followed along. So to sum that up, everything's important all the way down through it. Everything's important.
Steve, I love the fact that you've created these kind of alternate realities around your thing, and combining Jim Clark and Martini and a Mustang in the same kind of stew is really kind of cutting edge. Kurt, when you were with your dad working on the Eliminator, which is kind of the car that puts you on the map, what did that car represent to the two of you?
I mean, it's something that me and him did as a family, and it meant a lot to me and him just to build the car. And, it was my first engine ever, taking the parts down to the machine shop. And it was just, doing it in a 2-car garage and, just spending time.
Obviously, Cougars are pretty near and dear to your heart. You've got that great nickname, the Cougar Specialist, but you've also worked on a lot of Mopar cars. You're doing Project Artemis for Hemmings. You've also done a lot of trucks. What is it like when you do we have different palettes, or different canvases to kind of lend your skills to?
It's fun. It's fun to come up with different vehicles, different ideas, because in my past I've done over 60 Cougars, full restorations, and they get into some new stuff like 55 Chevys and different manufacturers and stuff. It's just it spikes up the morale in the shop. Everybody likes different cars, and then they like it, it's just, and then the fact that they're mods and stuff like that, and we don't have to worry about like every little piece nicking, all that stuff. We can do exactly, it's a blank canvas, we can build it.
And Neil, you are really closely kind of aligned with imports, but you've done an awful lot of domestics too. Do those give you an opportunity to kind of show what you can do outside of your comfort zone?
Yes, sir. Yeah, it started with the GM and Ford stuff, and it was completely different than Hondas or Nissan. So I've done a bunch of Skylines and 240s that have the Japanese flavor, but most of my style I try to keep clean, simple. So they do have an overflow, like the Mach-E we just built. That won Best to Show Ford at SEMA, and it was completely different. It was a domestic, it was electric, it had never been done before. So I just love cars in general, import or domestic, but you're right, I've done probably 30 or 40 domestics in the last couple of years. It's a challenge of finding different parts that look good, but it's definitely fun.
And Jonathan, you've done, a pretty wide range of stuff. You go from Mopar to Mustangs, but you've also done some really classic hot rods. Do you like working with older stuff?
I like the variety pack of the whole situation. It doesn't pin us in one type of car, and it keeps us on top of our toes towards styles. We learn all across the board towards the truck trends, to the hot rod trends, to muscle car trends, and it keeps us open across the board on everything. And sometimes we can cross those styles over a little bit to certain things, and I just like the variety pack it gives us.
And Steve Strope, you've got this really kind of wide range of vehicles you've worked on, but there is this inimitable Strope style or pure vision style. How do you make sure that DNA is kind of infused throughout whatever you're building, despite the fact that it might be a very different car from one build to another?
I think to answer that question, I just make sure it comes from me. Like I said, I'm very fortunate that I have very cool customers that want it to come from me. They'll give me the baseline, but then I take it from there. So that DNA is secure just because it's usually coming from my brain every time. And I have a very set way of thinking about things. I'm not set way, but certain pathway through my head. And so that kind of, it's funny because through the years, people have said, oh, I can always tell when it's one of your cars. And to be honest, I can't. I don't see what they see. I don't go, yeah, that's my signature treatment. I do this special thing every time. I don't. I have very, very different cars. The aforementioned Martini Mustang's very different from, we did a 72 Camaro that I did in the vein of an Aston Martin, a really nice GT car. And that
the TT Camaro?
Yeah, the TT Camaro, the 1,300 horse, and it won the GM Design Award at SEMA. And that car couldn't be more different from the Martini Mustang. They have nothing to do with each other. But I guess it's the way I approach a build, regardless of the theme or style, seems to come out as ideas of mine. I haven't put a lot of thought to that. I always found it interesting when people said, I could tell when it's one of your cars, because to be honest, I can't. I don't see what the common thread is. I know I happen to brainchild each one of them, but beyond that, it just comes out of my head and we just build it. I guess I don't have the most amazing answer to that question, but I just do what I do and then we build it. It's that simple.
I think it's a great answer. And Steve Moal, I am probably most familiar with your work of all the panelists, maybe Steve Strope's, but all of your things are very different, but I do think there is something, I guess, similar about them all, and having spent a lot of time with, like, say, Wayne Carini's Moal Roadster, and you were there at the birth of the hot rod movement. Do you kind of infuse a hot rod element into every build, or what is it that identifies it as a Moal car?
Well, it's our personal enjoyment, which is my hobby, is hot rodding. I've been a Bay Area Roadster member. I'm a lifetime member of the Bay Area Roadster Club, famous Northern California club. For over 40 years, we drive our cars. So that's my hobby. But besides my hobby, we do a lot of restoration. So we're influenced by race cars that we restore and sports cars. I really love sports cars. And so that's what we go for that. So it is, we tend to do what we personally love. I mean, we have things from Lotus 11s to Indy cars to Silver Ghost here. So we really crossed a lot of territory here. But the hot rod, we like hot rods. And I guess the thing I like about hot rodding is the freedom that you have to modify things as you so desire. And you can only, either that or you build a one-off special with somebody that trusts you to do that. And then you get to do what you really, you know, punch outside the box, you might say. But yeah, hot rodding is still deep in my heart. And that goes back to my Oakland days, going to the drive-ins around here. And I can still like to rattle the windows.
No, I can understand that. And Jonathan, you know, obviously you've done a lot of hot rods, but have you found that as your business grows and develops and the hobby matures, that a lot of customers are getting away from hot rods and into other types of cars? I mean, do you see the demographics of the market changing and what kind of cars you're being asked to build?
To a small degree, I think it all is on what that person grew up with and their age and stuff like that. Truck trends are real big right now, so it's kind of, you know, you got that certain age that wants those. I don't see a big change. I'd still say some of the muscle cars have maybe a leading edge to some degree, but nothing drastic to where it's going to say, you know, we're going to just build trucks for the next 2 years because that's the big hot thing. I still think it's pretty equal across the board.
Kurt Lawrence, I mean, you've done a lot of trucks. Is that trend growing in your business?
I mean, we've done 2 trucks so far, but I mean, most of it is muscle car based, and you know, the truck industry is very strong. We have a couple of people that contact us about doing trucks, but it's all very even like what people like is it's still very even type thing.
And Neil, is that the same for you, or being in Southern California, are you seeing more diversity in what your clients are asking you to build?
Yes, sir. For us, it's kind of weird. The old is coming back, very much like sneakers. So seeing a lot of stuff from Japan. It's crazy Civics and now 240s and Skylines. And then on the OEM side, everything's going electric for us. So the Mach-E, a lot of the Ford stuff this year, the Lightning. So it's a variation of old school back like in the 90s with the Japanese stuff, the imports, and then really new electric. So it's a wide range, especially in Southern California, where everybody wants anything that's cool and new, and some of the guys want the old school stuff.
It hurts my heart, Neil, to hear you refer to the 90s as old school. But anyway, so Steve Strope, how do you think we're going to be facing electrification in the future? Do you think you'll be doing electric builds, say 10 years from now or 20 years from now, or even less than that?
I've already been approached to do it. At this moment, I'm not choosing to do it. Again, I'm fortunate enough to have plenty of backlog workload to keep my shop busy for quite a while anyway. So I'll answer your question with this. I'm not opposed to it, but I've been in discussion with many people, as I'm sure all of us on this panel have, about this rising situation. And for me, the core of it is a hot rod, a muscle car, a race car is visceral. That's what I believe, why us humans like it, the sights, the sounds, the everything. And the e-racing, bless their hearts, they're keeping racing going, but it's horrifically boring for me. There's no, you know, when you're not hearing a Ferrari or Mercedes F1 car screaming at 8, 9, 10,000 RPM, or you're not hearing a Top Fuel dragster literally shake your skeleton when it goes by. I'm really not that thrilled if your electric dragster can go 400 miles an hour. Who cares? It'll go boom and it's done and it's over with, and there was nothing visceral to it. So I'm hoping by the time I bow out of this industry, there'll still be unless they completely make gasoline illegal, that we'll still get asked to build these cars. There are people who still want these cars, due to the fact that most hot rods and muscle cars and stuff like that.
Steve Moal, as someone who followed in his father and grandfather's footsteps, and you now have two sons that are following in yours, what do you think the future is going to bring to Moal's shop?
Well, that's a good guess. I think specialized automobiles will always be in vogue. I think people want something special. It doesn't matter if it's electric or what it is. And I read a good one the other day. A guy said, I have a hybrid. It burns gasoline and rubber. So I think hybrids, we'll stick with the hybrid concept. We do like the sound and the smells and the beauty of our contraptions. And our sons they use different techniques. They use different things. And just like getting me on your show here, it took one of my sons to get me on. I could go out and build a car out there, but I can't hardly light the screen up. Or I can't light it up, but we have CNC equipment and solid modeling and all that stuff going on here. And that's the future for the young guys. The young guys are going to do a good job. They're going to do a wonderful job, probably better than we ever could imagine. They have the great tools to do it. They're going to do wonderful things. And these guys on this panel every one of them is going to come up with something that excites the heck out of a group of people. Say, wow, did you see that guy's car? Wow. And that will create a trend. And it's going to go on for a while. We're not done. They're not.
No, definitely not. And you know, Kurt Lawrence, if you were going to give one piece of advice to an up-and-coming fabricator, an up-and-coming builder who wants to get into the hobby or the industry, what would you tell them?
Keep a sharp eye and don't give up. Just keep on going. You're going to make mistakes on the way, and you just learn from them.
Is that tenacity something that your father taught you, or is that something that you learned at the School of Hard Knocks, kind of working on your own projects?
My old man taught me a lot of that because me and him made a lot of mistakes together. Some of them are good mistakes and some of them were kind of painful. Yeah, you learn from the School of Hard Knocks on some of that stuff.
Steve Strope, what would you tell someone who is trying to break into the industry?
Well, I'll kind of spin that. People have asked me before, like, what's the claim? What was your big secret? How did you make it? Or however you want to define that. And I always said, you know what, I'm too stupid to know I can't. So I just do it. And I do it to the best of my ability. And I have pride in my work. I have pride in what comes out of my shop. So you give a damn, try your best, and just go ahead and do it. If it's what you want to do, go and do it. Don't listen to anybody that, oh, you can't. Oh, did you think about it? Nah, I don't think. Just go. I mean, you can have a good plan. Don't put yourself in debt. But, oh, the hell, put yourself in debt, whatever. Because that happens too. All that happens. You got to be willing to just do it and take it and make it happen and make it yours. It's really that simple. Stay tenacious. Want to do it. If you love what you do, you'll jump through flaming hoops like gardeners while you're trying to film. You'll do what you need to do, and you'll be happy. Because I got told before that wow, I want to shoot him right now. Oh boy. I got told before, if you love what you do, you never spend a day at work. It's not work. In fact, the most irritating, I'll be interested to hear the rest of the guys, the most irritating part of this whole thing is running the company. Building the cars is awesome. It's fun. You meet great people. You get to do great things, travel around and have an equal admiration society. Oh, that's so cool. I love what you did. It's the bookwork and taxes and paying employees and all that stuff. That's ugh. But if you love doing this, just do it. Put up with the nonsense and love what you do every day.
I mean, that's great advice. And Steve, let me give you some advice too. If you're going to kill the gardener, do it off camera.
Yeah.
Neil, what would you tell someone in the situation you found yourself in two decades ago?
Yes, sir. Well, that's great advice you just gave Steve. But
Yeah.
it's just like they said, really have fun, do what you love. For me, it was always about over delivering and taking chances. I mean, I grew up in Miami on the East Coast. Again, it was in the 90s, but there wasn't much going on. I moved to California in 2003 with my wife. We knew nobody. You know, we had some mentors and we just stuck it out, you know, and just keep doing it. As they said, there's no right or wrong. You're not going to make everybody happy, but I try to do the best I can. I try to keep everybody as happy as I can. I over communicate, talk to the guys that are coming up after us, because there's gentlemen like this who taught me how to get to where I am. My son is now 13, getting into cars. Enjoy it, spend family time, and don't be too good for anybody. Talk to people at SEMA, at shows, on social. I try to give back the same way I was given to, and it'll help the industry to continue to grow, as the other Steve said.
Steve Moal, what do you think?
Well, I think that these guys already have it to remain very passionate about what they do. That's obviously very important. Don't get caught up in trends. Use your own vision. You might create a trend, but don't get caught up in it. And I've experienced this myself. I've done something that if you really do something special, it won't necessarily be met with approval in the very beginning. And so they'll kind of walk around your car and nobody will say nothing. And I built a car years ago and my wife says, well, how did people like it? I said, I don't think they like it. And then it went on a little bit, and it ended up being a very popular car, but they just weren't used to seeing that kind of a car or a car done that way. So stick with your own vision, stick with your own passion, and that's the best thing. And do it for the right reasons. Do it to satisfy yourself. Like Strope said, you know, this is our life, and it's a good life. And what I've added to my car building experience is I've kept my hobby. I think it's also important to keep your hobby. So I drive these cars. I have one of these cars or some of these cars. Keep that, because that will also allow you to continue to be creative and get out there and mix it up with the best of them. So everything's going to work out just fine.
I love that, Steve, and I love that optimism. And Jonathan, you know, you're not that far removed from being the youngest guy in the room. What would you tell the youngest guy in the room?
My biggest thing, I think, is communication through customers, to your team that you're working with, to parts suppliers. Scheduling is one of the bigger deals. I look at it as if you got 10 people in the shop, I mean, why do you need 40 cars in there? Because you're only going to be working on 10 cars. So I think that makes it to where if you overbook, then you're going to put yourself in a hole, and then you're going to make that customer mad. You know, why aren't you working on his car? Stuff like that. I think communication is one of the bigger deals on the whole situation.
Oh, it is. And, you know, finally, I guess the last question is, I would never ask, I think, what your favorite build has been, because I think most of you will say the next one, and always kind of looking forward. Steve, what do you think about that?
Which Steve?
Steve Strope.
I have a couple I really, really want to build, because if I get to, I'll put the industry on its ear. But if I'm going backwards, I love Forever and a Day. I love the Martini Mustang we did. I love everything about that car. I love that engine. Driving around on the street in a detuned motor that was specifically designed to be an IndyCar motor, put together by Ed Pink, was outer worldly. So I just love that car. I love everything we did to it. But moving forward, I got a couple of things. Going to be tight-lipped though.
Okay.
But in the background, the Martini Mustang. Moving forward, I got a couple of things I would love to execute. So, and you know what? Every day, like I said before, I'm luckiest, just like these guys. We're the luckiest guys in the world. We get to build hot rods and custom cars and sports cars and do this thing that, for some reason, it's been in our veins and you can't get rid of it. And luckily for us, we get to do it every day instead of wishing and hoping we could. No, we're all very, very fortunate people that get to do the thing that we love to do.
So Steve Moal, looking back and looking forward, do you have a favorite, and is there something you'd like to do?
Something I would like to do? Of course. We always have a project that's our own project. It's underway right now. It happens to be a sports car, and I won't bore you with what it'll be, but in the past we've done that, and people have taken a liking to them and either purchased them or had us build them. But back to our favorite car, if that question's on the table, we built a car called the Gatto. It's powered by a Ferrari 250 Ferrari. It's a handmade special. We made every single part of that car. It still remains in our possession. We absolutely love that car. It sounds great. It makes smoke. It's what you gotta have.
Exactly. And Kurt, is this an easy question for you, at least in terms of favorites, because it has to be the Eliminator, or is there something else lurking out there?
I would say one of my favorite cars is the one right here behind me. Is one of the ones that they told me I couldn't fix it.
And what are you pointing to, Kurt? Because my eyes aren't that great.
1970, the Lethal Cat behind me.
Okay.
It's an all original build that burnt from the front to the dashboard. A lot of heat damage in the sheet metal and stuff like that. And we built that car back and brought it back to concourse condition, and it won a lot of awards. And but it also reminds me of my own car too, because they're almost exactly alike. So that's one of my favorite builds today.
And what are you looking at for the future? Is there something you're itching to do, or something you can reveal that you're itching to do?
Yeah, I have a couple of personal projects that eventually one day I'll get to. I've purchased, after my dad passed away a year, I actually found his first new car. So we found it in the Bronx on blocks, and it was in a newspaper ad, and I still have the original window stickers and everything to the car. So it's a funny story behind the car, that when my dad was in Vietnam, he got blown up by a landmine, and my grandfather went out and bought him. He wanted a 7-liter Cougar 427, and my grandfather went out and got him the car while he was still in the hospital, and got him a 6.5 liter and saved him $1,000. And my dad was pissed. So he traded the car in for the other car, and all those years when, he's like, I wish I had that car back. It had a lot of memories. And we never could find the car. And then all of a sudden, a year after he passed away, the car popped up. So I'm going to make it something special. Don't know what yet, but I'm going to make it something special.
That's cool.
We have no doubt at all. That is a wonderful story. Jonathan, how about you?
You're just getting us in trouble with all our customers if we don't pick their car. I've been asked before, and the one that always comes to mind first is probably our third. I think it was our third build we ever did towards a big customer build, and it was a 32 Ford Roadster, flathead. It set right. Everything about it was just, set, stance, the period correctness stuff on it. That's probably my favorite, and probably one of our last ones we just built was an 85 C10. So it's a big variety. I like all the styles. Right now, something that personally that I do for myself, I'm big into the 80 model stuff right now. I'm constantly looking at that stuff. So we hadn't done a lot of those, and I think it's just one of them things that just triggers, and you kind of want to reach out into that.
Well, I can't wait to see what you come up with. And Neil, what about for you?
So for me, I would make it quick. It's 2 and 2. One was I had one of the first 4-door Skylines in the early 2000s, but it was more of a show car, 1,200 horsepower. Couldn't really drive it, but wide body, air jacks, roll cage. And then I'd probably say the one I just built for Ford, which is the new Mach-E. Because for me, I see what Steve's saying about hearing, feeling, smelling, working Naira, but I'm fascinated by the newness of the electric and all the intricacies. So I'd say the Mach-E is probably my favorite, and I drive it now. Just like these guys, like the other Steve was saying, I drive all my SEMA cars. So I drive them around SoCal. I drive them to the Bay. So the Mach-E is fun. And then for new builds, I actually sold my first Skyline. I just bought another 4-door that I'm building with my son. And that one will be a daily driver. So that,
Cool.
and there's an electric truck. I just all have to say that I'm in the works with Ford that can power a house. So we're going to try to maybe body drop it, put some 26s, integrate some solar panels. So that might be a way to top last year's Best of Show. We're working on that for this year.
That is fantastic. And, you know, I cannot believe this time has gone by so quickly. I want to really thank Kurt Lawrence, Neil Tjin, Jonathan Goolsbee, Steve Strope, Steve Moal. A big thanks to Covercraft, our sponsor for Hemmings Club 54. This has been a fantastic conversation. Hopefully it was entertaining for all you watching. This was really one of the most kind of just fun times I've ever had, talking to just, you know, some real legends. All 5 of you are fantastic. And thank you again for joining us.
Thanks for having us here.
Yeah, thank you very much. Appreciate it. Appreciate the opportunity.
Not at all. And Kurt, Neil, Jonathan, Steve, and Steve, we look forward to what you're going to build next. And thank you so much. And we'll see you on the next episode of Hemmings Club 54. Thanks.
Thank you.
Thank you.
See ya.
Thanks now.
Thank you.